Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to let me repeat, the Rock and Roll Podcast. Check out this record. My name is Frank, and with me is my buddy, Mark.
Hey, Frank. And hello, listener.
We're syndicated via Redline Radio LLC, and you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcast. I just did it once that time. Don't be a bird on a wire. Head over to YouTube and see what this podcast looks like. Frank records this fully nude, and you don't want to miss it because he's got no control over his webcam.
That's true, fully nude. And for any new listeners out there, this is the podcast where Mark and I recommend albums to each other and we review them. Plus, we have a wide, and I mean wide variety of musical discussions, like our Spotlight. That's right, like our Spotlight series, where we dig into a band's catalog and we see what comes out on the other side.
Yeah, and in our verse series, we pit two albums against each other and make them duke it out for complete and total stereo domination.
That's right. So be sure to check us out on Instagram. You can follow us in our on Instagram, Facebook group. We are and we will additional content. Hopefully, we'll leave you wanting more musical goodness and, of course, of Mark's random nonsense. And most importantly, if you have a record you'd like us to check out, drop a comment wherever you find us. While you're at, subscribe. Give us a review, a rating, and I say this, as I always do.
Oh, yeah.
Mark, how are you, my man?
I'm chilling, Frankie. I went a little crazy on the old internet record store over the last few weeks. So I've just been hanging out with my records and catching up on some comic books and all this stuff my mother warned me would never get me anywhere in life. How are you, buddy?
I've been busting out the records too because the family enjoys them out in the open and just beautiful soundscapes and absolutely a good time. And you can see some of the ones we've been playing on the old Instagram page. So Marky Mark and the Marky Bunch, the album on tap for today is something that really changed the band's sound. Even if it was, in this album's case, brief and in some band's career, a permanent change, these shifts, they happen, right? It's undeniable. But my question is, do you like these sometimes monumentous and or detrimental type musical shifts? And think about that. I ask you that and think about like the bands you like that have done that.
Well, Frankie Francis Frankenfooter, I have to tell you, these kinds of bold moves by band can either or make them or break them. And sometimes it's just kind of a pit stop, and they move on, they go back. See our Weezer episode where Frank and I compared the debut Weezer album to Pinkerton. Pinkerton was a huge shift stylistically and sonically, but not one the band would hold on to because of the reaction just wasn't so favorable for quite some time.
Yeah.
So really, this is a kind of a case-by-case basis. There's certainly bands it worked for and certainly bands it didn't work for. I like to lump artists together, musical artists, painting artists, and look at their careers in periods. Picasso is famous for his blue period. Your favorite band can do that too. The early work, the later work. We're talking about a new drummer, a new guitar player, a new bassist, a new producer. And the whole thing's going in a different direction for as long as that record lasts.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. And of course, Mark referenced the Weezer episode, so be sure to check that out in the old archives. So for me, I'm naturally, a creature of habit, and I used I used to yap pretty loudly about when a band would change their sound. But as I've gotten older, I appreciate it, especially, again, I always say this, if the songs are good. That is vital. That's a vital key in my world. Shifts can occur and the musical boundaries can be tested, but the key component are the songs you're putting out of quality, or are they just crap at the end of the day? So Mark, let's do a top 10. And this is gonna be a little challenging, but fun. Yeah. And here's the top 10 albums that marked the band's stylistic change in sound. Now that could be a permanent change in style or for a brief time. So are you ready, my old pal?
Born ready, bucko. Top 10. Whoa, they changed their sound for this record in no order, but exactly the order I mean them.
Yes.
And then whatever order Frank says them in. My number 10 is the Lillingtons, their latest album, Stella Sapientia. You know what? I've never said it right. I'm never
Sapiente.
He's the Italian. How do I know? I can't say enough how much I love this record. But what's awesome is how vastly different it is from the previous episode, Death by Television. Please check it out in the archive. but the quality of songwriting is still super clean. The album's themes are crystal clear. It's just a darker, more mysterious than its predecessors, and just beautiful for it. This record really manages to be a concept album without dealing with the headaches of being a concept, just as their other albums were just so beautifully themed about, B movies and science fiction plots. What do you got, Frank?
Yeah, and I love that album, and I love when we did the Lillingtons episode because that opened me up to them. So absolutely, big thumbs up there. So my first one, the first one that comes to my mind is Rubber Soul by the Beatles. The tinny sounding Beatles, as my old man used to say, were no more once this album came out. These songs were way more mature and well crafted, and I don't think I need to say anything else about how then the rest of the story goes. So to me, this is when that point started. So that was mine.
Yeah, and can you get more clear periods between the 60s Beatles of I Want to Hold Your Hand and the late 60s and 70s Beatles of Rubber Soul? I mean, it's just
totally
two such different periods, two different bands. Great choice, Frank.
Thank you.
For me, number 9, you heard us talk about them on the Scott episode. Please visit our catalog for all previous episodes. Yeah, I'm just going to keep talking about it. The Mad Caddies, Just One More. It's the 4th album from the band. It's actually their second turn in style. The first 2 records, Quality Softcore and Drunk. That's me. Dunk. That's twice. Duck and Cover are amazing blend of pop punk and ska with their signature Dixieland style. Well, the 3rd album, Rock the Plank, is very much a pirate product of its time.
Yeah.
Just One More stuck out as its themes and tone spoke more to the hazards of living in a touring band and less about getting in fights for who you are and what t-shirt you're wearing. You still know it's the Mad Caddies, but it's this mature, personal record. It's just a really cool welcome change, especially after that pirate album.
I remember we were at a party, Mark. I can't remember the correct atmosphere because it's wild now, and Mark puts it on in the party, and he's like, "This is the new Mad Caddies album, everyone." And I was like, "Wow!" I was like, "That is definitely a switch," because you had just, I think, burned me Rock the Plank, and I was like, "Oh, this is totally pirate ska," And I remember us talking about that quite extensively, and I think we probably played that album between the both of us during that time frame so much.
I want to say that was a Halloween party which you came to dressed as a hula girl.
I knew you were going to mention that one.
You brought up the party.
I did. Never show anyone that video. Anyway, the number 9 and my number 9 is listen, here's another one from the same time frame as my previous one, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Again, keeping in the same time frame of the music. Listen, the Beach Boys and the Beatles were influencing each other as far as the innovation. And of course, everyone knows the story, but Pet Sounds is responsible for a big shift from the surf pop sounds to a more lush and rich sounding tunes. If you want to label it, they could have started the whole dream pop stuff. But anyway, Pet Sounds is my number 9.
Yeah, excellent choice.
Thank you, sir.
So we're up to the number 8 picks. For me, it's going to be a favorite of Frank's and a favorite of mine. It's Green Day's Insomniac.
Yeah.
Possibly the biggest commercial success of all the albums I'm going to pick today. Insomniac was a response by Green Day for those who said that they were selling out and weren't punk anymore, whatever the fuck that means. I'm sorry. It's just I don't.
It's true. Yeah.
This album they put out is fast. It's angry, and it's totally awesome. They proved they could put out a badass record. Too bad they went back to selling out right afterwards.
Right after.
With their radio-friendly fucking garbage. But hey, look, that's part of the business, and Billy Joe has more money than I'll ever see in my life. So what the fuck do I know?
There you go. And that album still rocks this day. You turn it up loud. It's awesome. My number 7, Swordfish Trombones from Tom Waits. My favorite Mr. Tom Waits. No more pianos and strings, folks. It's all experimental and off the beaten path as well. Waits' wife introduced him to old Captain Beefheart, and it was all over from there. I mean, have fun putting a genre to this music because you'll never be able to. So, Swordfish Trombones, Tom Waits is my number 8.
Excellent. So that brings us to number 7. I've got Black Sabbath. I chose Heaven and Hell, right? It's the first Dio Sabbath album, but it goes to show Dio is just an amazing vocalist with amazing vocal abilities. And, of course, the band's ability to mold itself and their style to his singing. Just an amazing Black Sabbath record that has nothing to do with Ozzy.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a shift in sound, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my next one is Darkness on the Edge of Town by Bruce Springsteen. Now, I know everyone's going to say, but Born to Run marked a real change in sound. And yes.
But not this sound.
Right, exactly. It did mark a change in sound. Absolutely. The songs were no longer, not every song was 7 to 8 minutes, and there wasn't these Dylan-esque lyrics. It was way more condensed. But, also in Darkness on the Edge of Town, gone were the abundance of lyrics. And for the most part, these songs were shorter. Darkness solidified that, though. Darkness solidified the change and that heartland rock that would come to play for albums to come. The songs were definitely more traditionally structured in Darkness on the Edge of Town. So that's why I chose that album.
Yeah, great choice, man. Great choice. So for number 6, I chose The Clash and, of course, Sandinista. It's the only truly different Clash record. I'm probably going to catch a lot of shit for this. But, The Clash's 4th album, a triple LP, Sandinista, we hear the band pick up all the small clues they dropped in every album before this about their love for reggae and world music and experimentation. They just pushed themselves in a direction no one saw coming, especially after London Calling. It's just such a separation.
Yeah.
Sandinista challenges its listeners to follow along as they push the concept of world music and strive for a better world through said music. Was it successful? No, of course not. It's a cool experiment worth your attention. I think it is. As a band that could have followed London Calling with whatever they wanted to do, they chose to push the boundaries. And that's one of the reasons The Clash is still one of the most important bands to ever exist.
Yeah, I was so engaged. And Mark's like, did it work? No, of course not. I love it.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Sandinista is another one. Have fun putting a label on what genre all that is, because you'll never.
It's insane.
It's insane. So my next one is In Reverie by Saves the Day. So there's lots of parallels with this album and the one we are going to be covering tonight as far as the departure of the norm. I can't say I like all Saves the Day albums, but I like about 3 or 4 of them. And this is one of them, to be honest with you. It was hated when it came out. It was absolutely despised, from Chris Conley's nasal voice to the toned down non-pop punk sound. They got a lot of shit for this. Of course, it was just a moment, and they went back to the stuff that worked in later albums. But this was a definite change in sound, and I don't mind this album. So that was my pick.
Very nice. So for number 5, I have the Swinging Utters, Dead Flowers, Bottles, Bluegrass, and Bones. You guys didn't think I was going to get through this list without mentioning the Swinging Utters, did you?
Of course not.
The Utters are a great example of looking at a band and seeing their body of work as 2 distinct, separate periods.
Yeah.
Dead Flowers, Bottles, Bluegrass, and Bones is the first album in their second period, released in 2003. The band blended their love for it all things bluegrass, folk music, and of course their own signature sound of street punk. There are those that suggest the turn happened actually in the 2000 self-titled release, but it's clearest and most distinct here. This is just such an amazing, superbly crafted punk rock songwriting workshop. You can look at this thing top to bottom. Musically, it's phenomenal. Lyrically, the record is an absolute monster. I took all these drugs to see you, and all I do is stare at the shit.
Yeah, I always love that song.
The fucking record is beautiful, and fuck you if you don't think so.
Yeah, I love that song, and I remember again when we first got our hands on it and started listening to it. It was on repeat for a while. Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, we're like, this is amazing.
I can't turn out of this car crash. It's gonna happen.
Exactly. My next is AFI Sing the Sorrow. So when you're 20-something and you like this Misfits style punk band and they suddenly change to a more in-depth and introspective style, you don't like it and you trash it. And that's exactly what I did. Right? Yeah, of course. Exactly what I did.
You just upset me.
Yeah. It's like, this is what I did. However, I changed, and later AFI, this album and on, I absolutely love. This album really started to change for the band and the wider variety of sounds and influences, and they really still find a way to write very well consistent crafted songs. So AFI Sing to Sorrow, this album on, to me, AFI is great. So
Yeah, excellent choice.
Thank you.
At number 4, this is one of the ones people are really going to tell me I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. It's the Ramones with Subterranean Jungle. You guys know that this is one of my favorite albums. And what? The Ramones?
Yeah.
All of their songs sound the same, Frank. To that I say, shut your dirty fucking ignorant mouth, slut. Subterranean Jungle is an oasis of 50s-inspired rock and roll by the godfathers of punk rock.
Yeah.
Nuanced changes can be heard from album to album for sure. But here the band turns its iconic brand of punk rock into 50s dance band, big band music.
Yeah.
It's a surprisingly positive album, despite the band's inner conflict at this time was at some of its worst. This ain't the cliche Ramones you think you know. Subterranean Jungle is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, I remember us having conversations about this too, and Mark's like, "Yeah, you gotta listen to it." And I thought of 2 things right away. Number 1 is Sex Pistols.
The Ramones are dead.
Sex Pistols suck, and number 2, number 2, England stole all the credit for punk. And there's a third thing, and the third thing is there's actually a video of the guy explaining it, and I think they really did steal the credit. But anyway, the third thing is there's those early Ramones albums everyone knows, right? Everyone knows.
They're so iconic.
Rocket to Russia, Leaving Home, Rock and Roll High School. But there's these other ones, deep tracks, really, really good stuff. And Mark described that album superbly. So, and that's a fantastic album. So we had a Metallica episode recently, again, checking the archives. I'm not going to go fully into this, but obviously the Black Album, Gone was the thrash metal, and Enter Sandman, and all these awesome hard rock anthems. They eventually went back to traditional metal and thrash sounds, but obviously Metallica's Black Album, you can't deny that was a change in sound. So that was mine.
I thought you might go S&M on that. I like your pick, though.
Oh, thank you. Because I know it's one of your favorites.
Oh, why do you? So number 3, we have reached the 3 spot, Frank, and with the bronze medal, for me is going to go to Propagandhi, everyone's favorite Canadians. Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. It's their 3rd album. It's a drastic departure from the band's previous work. The guitar work is far cleaner in tone, but also faster and far more technically played. The band would say that they took the 5 years between albums to learn how to play their instruments.
Yeah.
Frank? You love telling that story.
I do.
The political themes from the previous albums make it over, but much like the guitar work, they're far more pointed and considerably more in your face, and quite honestly, better well tuned and unlike me, articulated. Thank you.
There you go.
The last sentence I wrote for this, Frank, is this record fucking rules.
Yeah, I mean, listen, here you are. You got these 2 albums in the beginning that are based your 90s punk sound, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you're now a thrash punk band? This is metal punk? Or like how did, first of all, vocal tone change all of a sudden as like Chris learns to sing, and he learned how to play guitar 1,000 times better than he already was playing. And really, like, I feel the start of Propagandhi is that album on. Like when I go and listen constantly to Propagandhi, yeah, exactly. It's Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, all the way on. Love it. Great album, great band, and all their stuff is of quality. Next for me, this is for my wife in an indirect way, but is Rumors from Fleetwood Mac. Unpopular opinion here, and people could give me crap for it. I actually don't like Fleetwood Mac. My wife though loves Stevie Nicks, but just her alone, and I'm actually with her on that. Anyway, before the Mac that everyone came to know, and they were a totally different band, your run-of-the-mill kind of blues band, but that all changed when old Lindsey Buckingham and Nicks joined the band. So Rumors, Fleetwood Mac. Again, it's just what came to my head on that one. So
yeah, definitely an iconic album, and I think they're an interesting band in that a lot of people don't know that that's not the first Fleetwood Mac album.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. Yeah.
A lot of people think that that's the genesis, that's where it came from, because it is. I will talk all the shit in the world about Fleetwood Mac. That record is so stewed within itself. There's so much infighting and love and fucking just stupid 70s cocaine shit that it in itself is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's not good, but it's a beautiful thing. So I understand why people love that fucking record, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to shit I want to talk about. Thank you. Did you like that transition?
I love it.
In the business, we call that a segue.
We do.
We do. At number 2, it's going to be Rancid and Life Won't Wait. Coming off the success of 1995 and Out Come the Wolves, Rancid released 1998's Life Won't Wait. Easily one of punk rock's most underrated albums. Life Won't Wait is the only album not to feature Bad Religion's Brett Gurewitz as its producer. This is also recording chunks of the album in Jamaica with guest musicians such as Buju Banton, Billy Joel Armstrong, and of course Dickie Barrett, totaling 27 additional players on the album, Frank, including plus the band.
Not the band, but the band.
Okay. Right, the band Rancid.
Yeah.
Led to this, this album rooted deeply in the band's love for dance hall, reggae, punk, and ska. It's really just such a tribute to everything they love. There's even a rockabilly number for Frank.
Thank you.
Many consider it Rancid's Sandinista. I got really excited there. I'm sorry. Just all over that sentence.
They even mentioned Sandinista in one of the songs, so it's funny.
Yeah, they were aware of it, which is kind of cool that they were able to, steer the train as it went off the tracks, if you will. Though it's clearly more focused, just as we mentioned, as to what they wanted to do and far less experimental. They had a great time jamming, but they knew what they wanted, this beautiful dare I say, masterpiece, which ranks amongst my favorite albums of all time. They knew what they were doing. Definitely, if you haven't listened to Rancid's Life Won't Wait, pause the podcast, listen to it, and come back.
Yeah, well, and we have a spotlight series on Rancid where we go through everything. And what's funny is the next album.
2 episodes.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the catalog.
There you go. And what's funny is the next album, Rancid 2000, could almost be on the list as well for marking its stylistic change. Anyway, so my number 2 is Deja Entendu by Brand New. I mean, they just had one pop punk album and then they changed directions like immediately. They went for a way more serious and emotional sound, but that was even gone by the time we get to the next album, which is The Devil and God Are Raging Inside of Me. That's where they became, to me, the legitimate rock band, one of my favorite albums. But this album, Deja Entendu, is the start of it. So that was my number 2.
Yeah, and I think you were right. You could have picked either one of those albums to say was their turning point.
Yeah.
Because wherever you are on that road, it's fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
So for me, number 1, it's All, Breaking Things. Considered to be what I think is the band's third period. The big chunk of change here being Chad Price on vocals, as each of the first 3 periods are noted by changes of frontman. I think the fourth style in All is going to be stylistically when they kind of adopt the cartoon aspect of the band, all much as though the Descendants captured the identity of Milo as a cartoon. That said, I kind of went on a period there. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, so this really boils down to Chad's vocals. For Breaking Things, All chose a heavier and more mature sound. It'll last for the next album, Pummel. Both still very much sound like All, with a few tunes that are lighthearted. But the beauty here is still the ability to express themselves, maturing without losing who they are. This record is as personal as any emo record. The songwriting or folk album, I don't care. This fucking record is so personal. It's fucking badass, even with the strip club song.
Nice.
Breaking Things will make you live, laugh, cry, just like that sign you bought from Bed Bath & Beyond.
Now, it's been a while since I've mentioned this, but I'd like to go on record check out this record and say that I'm responsible for getting Pummel on Spotify. So you knew I was going to mention that. I knew you.
If you listen to the back catalog, you can Frank here say that.
Yes.
In another episode, I just don't know which one it was.
I don't know which one it was either, but listen, I went to see Chad play, and when I had the opportunity to speak with him, and I said, hey, Pummel's not on Spotify. Shortly thereafter, it was on Spotify. So I'd like to give myself credit for getting that album on Spotify. Yeah. Everyone can thank me, all that good stuff. All right. Mm-hmm. So my number 1, listen, I'm segueing into the episode here. It's the album of the evening, which is the Gab Kids on a Wire. That's the reason why we are here tonight, right, Mark? So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really doing anything else.
Oh, okay. Did you want to see if you had some time available to talk about this album real quick, or?
Yeah, sure. You're gonna skip the digestion thing.
No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go into it. So let's wrap some context around this meat and cheese sandwich. And Mark, you know I love a good sandwich, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, those peanuts, by the way, they look amazing. I just got to tell you that.
Got to get the skins on, man.
There's no cashews in that, though, is there? Oh, man.
Great peas.
There you go. So the Gab Kids, formed in 1995 in Casey, Missouri. The band is Matt Pryor, vocals and guitar, Jim Suptic, guitar and vocals, Ron Pope on bass, Ryan Pope on drums. That's how they started, and they eventually would be joined by James DeWeese on keyboard. So we get the first album, 4 Minute Mile, and then bam, it's 1999, Something to Write Home About, which we covered in our 1999 episode, which is a good time because we thrashed 99, but then we also give it some compliments too. That album put them on the map and is heralded as one of the best emo albums of all time, and it just catapulted their career. Now, Mark, I know we mentioned it briefly in the 99 episode, found in archives, but you enjoyed digesting that album, right?
I wouldn't say I enjoyed digesting it. However, it was something to write home about. I don't know what sentence I wrote there. Look, I'm not a big emo fan. I did know Something to Write Home About. I did know 4 Minute Mile. But these were albums I had kind of moved on from, and I don't even remember this coming out. You know, emotionally, Frank, I'm a different dumpster fire now than I was then. So I'm interested to look back at it now and see how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so listen, here we are with the band. So after a split and a B-side album later, we are at 2002, and we get On the Wire, released on Vagrant Records, right? Everyone remembers Vagrant Records. This is a radical departure from the high energy pop punk tunes. There isn't, to me, punk here at all. It's indie mixed with Americana and some alt country. That was due to the band listening to a lot of Wilco at the time. Well, I love Wilco. And taking the approach of writing songs collectively as opposed to just being Pryor who's penning them. Now, I've been listening to this album consistently since the day I bought it in 2002. And of course, on the early take side, I was like, what is this? Where are those emo tunes? Why is this toned down? But believe it or not, I quickly loved this album. So Mark, you were just exposed to this record really last week. So kind of different context here for both of us, but what were your initial thoughts?
You know, it's definitely a departure from the earlier work. Ironically, I think the best title for it might have been Alt, as it kind of skirts around like all of the alt subgenres. You know, it's got some alt country, it's got some alt indie, and dare I say some alt Oasis. Initially, I was the fan on this one, but I spent a week with this record, and the nuances of it really grew with me. So I'm excited to dive in.
All right, cool. So, alrighty, let's do some track by track style. So, I will go first if cool. We're gonna do it Overdue. So, this is the only single from the album. Everything gets abandoned here that you know about the band previously. Pryor's voice is mellow and subdued. This is basically an acoustic track with like a little country shuffle going on. I happen to love it. My wife, who likes Pryor but doesn't like when he strains his voice with those like emo moments, she thinks this is where his voice is best suited for, or what is best suited for. Anyway, it's a deep and touching track to me. Being a parent, this is Pryor reflecting on his dad and how he will be as a parent. And the lines here, you're a few years overdue. I spent them waiting here for you. Now your charity's refused. I can name a penance for abuse. To me, he does a great job of these simple rhyming schemes, but making them totally impactful. So the other really gut-wrenching lyrics from a parent's perspective is, went on a limb for you, capsized when I turned 22, did it burn as bad for you? No bottle serves to soothe my wounds. I really like that and everything about this tune. And when I'm able to catch it live, I'm a fan. What did you think about Overdue, Mark?
Well, that Wilco influence is certainly thick right up front here, right?
Right.
From the shuffled drums to the subtle guitar part to really even kind of the way he's rhyming his words with his voice. You know, it's pretty enough. You pointed out some really fantastic lines this song has. I'm not a fan of starting the album like this. It felt more like a closing track, but
interesting.
It's definitely a really pretty song. It just feels a little out of place at the start of the album.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember popping the CD in because that's how I would purchase it in 2002, and I was like, "Oh, this is the first song." Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm like,
it's a little jarring. I mean, it's certainly right. Hey, this is not the last records.
yeah,
It's this other thing. I don't know that that's the best way to start an album, though, unless that's what they wanted.
right. Yeah, who knows?
So track 2 is Stay Gone. Stay Gone is a great little pop number. I'm surprised this didn't get regular airplay. It's got its harmonies are just contagious. It's light and bubbly. The lyrics stay on par with what you expect from a band like the Get Up Kids.
Yeah, I love this tune, and I'm glad to have it on the live record that they put out too. Because I wish they would play more. Going from Overdue to the first listen, and then you hear this song, you're like, okay, here we go. So now we're gonna get going. But as great as those tunes were on Something to Write Home About, this track to me shows growth. It's a true group effort here with great rock and a little Midwestern tang. Um, Twang, I should say, Tang. Maybe I'm thinking of the drink Tang. Who knows?
Getting thirsty, folks.
Yeah, it's fun to play on acoustic guitar, and it's one of my go-tos when I'm around the house. And I always like the word placement of "I'll fawn over photographs." I think that's really cool. So yeah, it's a good little number. Number 3 is "Let the Reins Go Loose." Here's where I think it gets interesting and a little experimental. I saw them on tour in 2002 for this album, and this is how they started the set with this song. Now I was stoked because that's when I really I had that brief moment of not liking the album. Now I started liking the album, and I was stoked. And if a video existed, you could hear probably me in the crowd, because the crowd was acting like a bunch of pissants, to be honest with you, who didn't get their utopian piece of cake at a party that wasn't even for them, and more on that later. So this had great atmosphere. It opens things up. I thought it was a little psychedelic of a feel, more straightforward sound, and when the keyboards came in, I thought it was great harmonies in the beginning, and the drums and the bass are really holding down the fort. I think there's a lot of interpretation that one could come up with here, and that's cool. The climax of when Pryor's voice gets louder mixed with the backgrounding vocals, I think it's on point, and this tune has grown on me over the years. What about you, Mark?
You know, I don't hear much, if any, of that experimental kind of psych sound.
Sure.
Yeah, that said, I like the use of the keyboard here as an organ. I could have used this could have been a single to me.
You're right.
You know, it's soft, it's delicate. The backing vocals are really cool. It just sort of ends, which I dig, but it's probably part of the reason it wasn't a single. I think people who crave that very formulaic musical experience, I think they would have had a problem with that. And that's probably why bands like this and songs like this and albums like this don't get that major airplay.
Good point on that one. Good point.
You know, track 4, Fall from Grace. This is one of those tracks that appears one way, but when you really dig into it, it comes out on the surface as a song about kind of just being betrayed and dealing with it. But I think it's really more about not dealing with your issues and forcing those on other people and using someone else's behavior to excuse the fact that you're not dealing with it. I think it's really cool. It's got a cool tone, and I love the mood and atmosphere the song sets up. I just wish there was more, or it wasn't so much of that constant tambourine shaking. I wish they would have done something tempo to mix it up a little bit. Otherwise, I thought it was a really cool song. You know, like I said, that would have just made it a little more interesting to me to see them build it to something.
Yeah, it almost feels bare, right? Because of that kind of in the background too. And that's a really good way you described it. I think the rest of it, what I really like about this song is the chord progressions, the quick changes are something not normally used in your everyday song. And more importantly to me, this is some of the most flawed I think I hear the band on a recording. And I love the fact that I hear some of the flaws. Pryor's voice almost seems to go off key here at times. And maybe that was intentional. And if it is, I think it's great. It fades out oddly at the end of the first and second chorus. There's that weird feedback that comes in like towards the end of the song, and this unclothed overall vibe of the song really, to me, makes it a standout track when I was first listening to it. I only wish they played it more live. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting song. That tambourine bit though, you nailed it. You nailed it on that one.
I just would like to see a little more out of it.
Yeah, got it. Grunge Pig is number next. I think this is a loud rocky number. I wasn't the biggest fan of this at the beginning, but it grew on me. Grunge fits the bill here, as there are some elements of it. To me, I don't know. I think this is just them doing a rock and roll song. I like the F chord to the B flat. It's the nice riff in the background. This was another one I saw live during that show, and I actually that I was mentioning earlier, and they nailed it. So I didn't mind this song. What about you, Mark?
My headphones must be not working because at no point did it get loud or rocking. I tried. This feels like a closing track to me. It just got this slowed pace about it that feels like we're closing up or wrapping up the album. It's a cool enough song, but again, it just really feels misplaced. I keep waiting for it to build to something, and it just kind of stayed soft and stayed. It never really got rocking to me.
Got it.
So, track number 6, High as the Moon.
High as the moon.
I bet this song was way cooler on just an acoustic guitar. This feels really crowded to me. I like the little poppy guitar riff and the drums. That should have been enough, but adding that piano in just kind of constantly over everything, it just felt like they were overdoing it. It's got sweet lyrics. It's a sweet song lyrically, excuse me. I just wish I didn't have to pick between listening to the lyrics and the guitar solo over the lyrics.
Yeah, it's interesting too, now that you're talking about it, and I don't have this written down anywhere, but you're mentioning that piano. That piano is really poignant in the song too. So it's like maybe they could have toned that down. Yeah, just a little bit.
It feels a little heavy on top of everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
A lot like that tambourine in the previous song.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Just constant, and you're like, there's so many pretty things already going on. You're just weighing the song down with it.
This album could, one of the downsides could be some just overall production value. Could be.
And you look at when a band goes from like we talked about, the different things that can change it, from just one guy writing the songs, bringing them to him and then fleshing them out, as opposed to building all the songs together. It's gonna sound very different. You're gonna get these different, especially if this is the first album they did it, and they're really learning how to write songs together.
Yeah.
In this format, it's a different beast. You're gonna be a different band.
Totally. So during that same show, which I'm going to reference a couple of times, that I was at, they played this, and the minute it came on, someone was like, "Is that a Matchbox 20 song?"
Yes.
I know. I mean, listen, it's poppy as hell, but I like the lightness of it. And when I think of pop rock, this is what I think about. You're not hearing lyrics like "I build an altar for you out of Polaroids and pens and the walls of my room" in your everyday pop songs. I think the vibe of these naturally are there's some darkness to them, but the brightness and let's use the term power pop here. It breaks that up a bit. So I dig the tune. Number 7
Pryor,
we get.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say you're right. Pryor does kill it with the lyrics.
It's just absolutely, and you don't hear those in your poppy songs. And listen, let me tell you, Matchbox 20 is not writing lyrics like that too. And we could have a full episode on ripping that band to shreds if you want, my friend. I'll pay you if we could do that one.
Well, how much?
Yeah, exactly.
Number 7.
All that I know. So the cool thing with the Gap Kids is that there's actually 2 singers. Sure, one only sings about 25% of the time, but that still makes the band have diverse sounds, especially with the songs and the writing. This one is sung by Jim to me, and he must have been going through a Beatles phase because it sounds like a modern version of them. It's a little trippy, and you get some 60s stuff going on, and it's ebbs and flows on how I like it compared to the rest of the album. But it's a cool tune. All that I know. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I get where you're picking up that Beatles influence. I hear him pulling a lot of that kind of Oasis half-talking singing that they stole from the Beatles. And, I just couldn't get past it. It kind of fucked up the song for me. I found the keyboard replicating the sounds of a flute kind of obnoxious too, because, again, he played it like a keyboard, not the way you would hear flutes. I don't know why the 65 was shoved in here. It just doesn't work with what we have as a record so far. So, number 8, Walking on a Wire. It's the titled trackish time, right? I normally really like the Get Up Kids lyrics. This song just feels like layers of cliches, and truthfully, nothing's really said or expressed. I think this is just a great job of him finding words that fit musically as he's singing, and not so much writing really profound things. I did get kind of lost in that though, because I wasn't used to that out of a Get Up Kid song. Lots of 16th notes on the hi-hat and ride cymbal, that beautiful floaty guitar part. It sounds cool. It does. Him not really saying anything really kind of messed with me. Sometimes a song can just sound cool. And I think I'm struggling with that. I really dug the atmosphere with this song, Frank. I just, it just sounds really cool, and it doesn't mean anything, and maybe it doesn't have to.
Maybe it doesn't have to. To me, this is a serious album in the grand scope of things, and sure. This is an anchor, I think, for that seriousness. I like the song's overall vibe. So I think we could both agree on that the vibe and the atmosphere is what makes this song that. It's very moody, melodic, great keyboard work, the guitar riffs, the solos. Yes, I could hear with the lyrics, the walking on a wire on the ground, though, I think his repetition of that, to me, it's about failing at life and the process one keeps falling and this whole delicate nature of life. So like that to me fits the atmosphere. I like the jamming at the end and how the keyboards are just kind of sticking out there. Then everything stops and then it keeps going. To me, it's touching. And the one good thing is that they still play this song live, because when I saw them a couple of years ago, they played this. So thankfully, this is one that's still in the repertoire. 9, Wish You Were Here, another poppy tune here in the vein of High as a Moon. Again, it's something like a simple term, Wish You Were Here, said often enough, right? But I feel Pryor and company are just able to take the simple concepts and turn them into pretty good songs. The musical structure is also kind of basic, but at the end they change it up, and I like that structure as opposed to going back to what we heard in the verses and the choruses. I have always liked this tune. What about you, Mark?
On any other pop album, this easily would have been the best deep track. It's simple and catchy, which is perfect for a pop song.
Yeah.
I think that we finally get a significant tempo change within one song here. And I like that the band really builds from that lower tone and just crescendos, as we haven't really heard it done so far on this album. I think it's a really gorgeous track.
Oh, yay.
Possibly one of my favorites, followed by definitely my favorite. Give me a little kissy there, Frank. Yeah, there you go. Campfire, Kansas, at track 10. Like I said, easily one of my favorite albums. It does kind of feel a little bit like a bonus track here. This is the other singing, one of the Pope brothers.
Jim, something.
Jim, thank you.
Yeah.
They do a beautiful job of just capturing those simple songs of youth, usually played just on an acoustic guitar. And it makes me want to go camping. What about you, Frank?
Well, if our lives were back to normal and our wives would let us have a dude's weekend, we'll go camping, my friend.
Oh. You heard it here, folks.
You did.
Promised.
Yep, I'll bring Brito along. So anyway,
I can't go now.
This is actually a fan favorite, which is crazy coming from an album that stirred things up with the fans. This song, again, features Jim on lead vocals. And to me, it's about told nostalgia, right? It's about good times, hanging out with your friends, and almost a tale of coming to age, which so many like to sing about. It captures Kansas. And listen, I've never been there, but this song gives me all that good old Midwestern feeling, and I've always enjoyed the song. And me and Mark are gonna go camping, and we'll do an episode from the campsite.
Probably not.
Probably not. No. That would be the title of the next song. The worst idea if we did that. Okay, so this is one of my, actually, believe it or not, it's one of my favorite Get Up Kid songs. If I had to put a list together, I'm talking like top 10 here when I'm thinking of it. The shame is outside of them playing it during the tour for this album, I can't find another live performance for it, nor did they play it when I've seen them like the 5 other times after that. I think it's a cool rock song, nice loud guitars and keyboards. Again, it gives it almost that classic feel. One thing I love in songs is when they go up in keys and octaves, and in the last minute of the song, we get that step up. And it totally changes the sound. We get Pryor's voice hitting some high tones, but not still what we've heard on the last album. I've always dug this song. I wish they would play it live more. Mark?
Yeah, the 60s influence is definitely back here.
It's back.
Sure. It's a fun tune, but feels kind of out of place with the rest of the album, just like the other song. I think it's a great song, though. You know, kind of that throwback pop as a style seems like it should work so well. And these guys do a great job with it. I dig that it does get a bit heavier towards the back half of the track.
Yeah.
It really grows. It really progresses. You know, there's a lot of kind of guitar noodling and keyboard noodling over the singing, which distracts me. But it's not nearly as bad as it is in High as a Moon. But I really dug this track. This is a cool song.
Cool.
It's a really cool song. So I believe we're at the final track.
We are at the final track.
Hannah, Hold On. You know, the good news here is that for an album with a few closing tracks, the closing track is a closing track. So that's nice. The way he does the Oasis and Emo kind of makes me cringe because it pulls me out of the album, and makes me think about how much I don't like Oasis. And there's a few more phrases, clotheslines that just kind of do that to me and make it hard for me to move on. I got to kind of listen to the song a few times to get past it. I think it's kind of ironic that one of the last lines in this is, "You only disappoint the ones who don't believe." Now, I'm not talking about the context of the album, but as a breaking up song, the line feels kind of selfish. I promise there are many things I've believed in that have disappointed me, and it wasn't because of my belief in them. It's because that thing failed, and it's okay to be disappointed in that. So it kind of feels like a cop-out, especially in the context of it being a relationship song. That said, I don't know who or why the song was written for. I've just been listening to it for a week on repeat and trying to figure it out. Other than that, I think it's a cool song. I dig the vibe of it. I dig the atmosphere. This song makes me stop and think.
There you go.
Yeah. What about you, buddy?
It served its purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So listen, right, it closed the album, an album of now closers, right? I think this is the song, the perfect closer for the album. It almost resembles at times the emo moniker, but it's the breakup song, and he's saying, hey, this is ending, but you're gonna have to hold on and move. Musically, it's emotional, but again, there's something different that still separates it from your everyday emo tune. It's the acoustic guitar strumming, or is it the acoustic guitar strumming? Is it the riffs? One consistency this album has, even though there are inconsistencies, is a build-up.
Anything can happen.
Right. It's a build-up of the songs that we get, and then the unleashing of them. And then, of course, you get Pryor's higher vocals here. Yeah. And it comes back down, and it finishes how they started the album, basically, with an acoustic guitar and a calm voice. So the way this song ends is the way it began with Overdue. So that's Hannah, Hold On, and we have completed On a Wire. So let's go into some final thoughts, my man.
Final thoughts.
So it's safe to say this album, I think we could agree on, that has more context for me than it does for you. I mean, I've been listening to it now for 18 years, and I just suggested it to you last week, right? So I know we're coming from two different places. As far as my love for the Get Up Kids go, I really like all their albums. I don't think they've really made one that's coined the clunker. What's funny is that the ones that they are perceived as the clunkers by the masses due to not being in the same as before are usually my faves. Those are the ones I tend to go to. This album, I think, took balls and it impacted the band. Since we didn't get something to write home about part two, they basically gave their fan base to Dashboard Confessional at the time because that's when they blew up. I guess that happens, right? But the sad side of it is fans like me, because these albums get so criticized for not staying in that box, is that the average person, because they don't want a change in sound and they want monotony, we never get to see these songs live. And that to me is an absolute shame. A band puts their heart and soul into making something different, and they don't even get a place for those tunes. And it's a really, really odd dynamic. Now, in the case of the Get Up Kids, they would return to form with 2004's Guilt Show, then take a hiatus, and then in 2011, they pulled it again. The album There Are Rules. I like that album as well. It's totally new wave, and it wasn't accepted. And we don't even get one of those songs live. Like I barely am able to hear those songs live. And at least we get a few from On a Wire nowadays. So to conclude, on a wire. It took guts. And when you had all the momentum in the world, to me, that's ballsy to all of a sudden take this shift. It's a total band effort. And to me, it's a serious record. The tunes are flawed and there is some inconsistencies, but this was a conscious effort to make a certain sound, whether it was really natural or really themselves trying to prove that they weren't classified under that label. Well, me and Mark are never going to know that. But I think they proved it. When I think of the Get Up Kids, I think of a really well put together rock band. Mark, your turn. And, I really am glad that you've made it so I still want to listen to this album. So.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. So in a segment we like to call Mark's Final Thoughts, what was fun here for me anyways,
Yes.
Other than the first two Get Up Kids records, I didn't actively listen to emo. Plus, it's been kind of forever since I listened to them. The first two albums, that is. And I had go back in this week of re-listening and listen to those records just to really find the nuances, right? Again, the idea behind this week's episode was an album that was drastically different from previous records. And I think this is a great example of that. That said, I lost my space. That said, I was open to the album standing on its own. With the exception of the two 60s influenced tracks that just kind of don't do anything, I think this album really works. I would have liked to see the order of the tracks on the track listing a little different, but I don't know that would have made a difference when it was released and to the critics. Like I said, there's just a lot of this album, a lot of those slower songs that feel like the end of a record. And I think perhaps in that context, if we look at this record as almost, vignettes, as little plays within a bigger piece of art, they kind of work. 60s stuff aside. It was a bold choice by the band. I can't say it paid off in the end, but perhaps personally, I don't know that I'm going to revisit this album regularly.
Right.
It's just maybe just not my kind of record that I would regularly jump into. But as far as emo stuff goes, this is some of the best I've ever heard.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad, I thought your opinions on it were fantastic, and I really like how you took some time to really digest it in. So I think that was really cool. So I'm glad. Thank you for the thoughts, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was going to say something, then I completely forgot about it. So don't worry about it.
You're funny. Hey, kids.
Next week, we've got something cool lined up. Frank, why don't you tell the folks at home what you've pulled off?
All right, buddy. So next week, we're going to be interviewing the band High on Stress from Minnesota and chatting to them about their new album, Hold Me In. So their Instagram description hooked me right away, where the manager of the Replacements stated how their new album was exceptional work. So since the both of us have this undying thirst for new music, I figure, hey, we get to check out an album that we haven't listened to fully before, and we get to talk to the band about it. So I'm really ready for this. Mark, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, so this should be fun. I just started listening to them today because you told me we were doing this today. It should be a lot of fun. I've never heard anything from this band. I'm digging what I'm hearing so far. Should be interesting. Plus, it's going to be our first interview episode. It's a new kind of episode. Yeah, buddy.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
And again, Mark and I are really, really digging it. And
hey, are you excited?
I'm excited, man.
I'm pretty excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Me and Mark are just little inquisitive bastards, So
little hamsters running around the world discovering new things.
That's
just
it.
Burrowing and stuffing things in our cheek pouches.
That's it. All right, anyway, everyone. So thank you very much for listening. As always, give us a like, a follow, a suggestion, and of course, an album for us to review. And until next time, ciao.
Bye-bye.